Hello, everyone, and welcome to the HR Verdict Podcast. My name is Renee Trotman, and I am your virtual HR advisor and counsel. On today's episode, we're getting into something a little bit touchy that might stir a few pots and ruffle a few feathers. Today, we're calling out what I call a quiet problem, the disguised HR department, the hidden epidemic, or what I like to call ghost HR syndrome. What is exactly ghost HR syndrome, and what is this epidemic that you're speaking of? Well, I'm speaking about the one that technically exists, that meaning an HR department, but sits under the finance or operations teams, departments, or executives, and are not really a standalone function. Historically, when we look at HR, it's come from the term personnel or just an admin function. And we've evolved to human resources and people operations, POPs teams. And there's been an evolutionary journey of having HR practitioners have a seat at the table. Now, when we look at organizational structures, we have businesses of all sizes that often fold HR into other departments. When you look at a typical org structure, you have your CEO, you have your C suite function, you have senior leaders, and maybe middle and frontline leaders as your leadership structure, high level. Oftentimes, what we're seeing, in my experience, and I can speak firsthand, you're seeing a CEO, and then you're seeing C suite functions and leaders of only the functions that they are deeming to be most important and to directly report to the CEO. And so you're often seeing the HR function hidden and folded into finance, into operations. You're seeing people such as office managers, finance managers, controllers, heads of finance, CFOs, COOs, that they're actually doing quote unquote the HR function and or leading the HR function. And when this happens, there are, in my opinion, immediate consequences. One, there's no real seat at the leadership table that is going to have a distinguished advice and counsel specific to people and the people strategy. And this puts your organization in what I like to call a reactive posture. It means that you are reactive versus proactive. And this is dangerous. And I know a lot of organizations, a lot of businesses say, well, we're doing okay. We're doing fine. Everything's great. Well, I'm going to tell you, as an HR expert, someone who has gone and gotten educated in this space, who is educated not only on the business and HR components, but the employment and labor components as well. And I often say it's good until it's not. And in my experience, we often see that organizations are going along just fine until you meet that one employee. And that one employee is what I said, when you meet your match. Now, when you get this one employee, they have an opportunity to take you through the dirt and beyond if you are not prepared. And oftentimes, with someone with HR expertise and knowledge, sitting at the table with key decision makers, such as the utmost and highest operator of the organization, you are often able to cancel and or reduce the risk that comes with this, because you are getting very distinguished advice and counsel about how to safely and compliantly navigate these uncharted waters. Now, this is no different than if you have your fiscal year budgeting, you have your end of month closing, you have to think about pivoting and reducing costs. You sit with your certified, trained, experienced, educated, skilled individual in that function and you have them guide you. Now, I want you to go on a journey with me for a moment. You have someone who is your CFO or operations person who is there, yes, to keep your operations and your fiscal and financial pieces moving. You have an issue or issues that are bubbling around your people, your employees, one of your biggest quote unquote assets in your company to keep things moving. You have a senior HR practitioner that's working in the organization that's sitting under a COO, a CFO, or wherever they are sitting, not directly reporting up to the highest operator of the organization, the CEO, often you are putting yourself at risk. You have now a situation where this individual, the senior level HR person, is trying to tell you there's issues bubbling, there's concerns, there's something going on in our environment. This is not working. You're at risk of losing people. Up, if you do this, you're at risk of legal claims. And that individual who is at the C level, who is to now translate that information upward on their behalf, is not going to translate it in the way that it needs to be translated. We've heard of the game operator. When it goes up through one or two people, it's not going to land the same way that if it was coming from the direct person. There are things that your CFO and your COO are going to see about your finance and your operations that they are trained to see. The same goes for an HR expert. They are not here. We are not here to prevent you from doing the things that you need to do. We want to help you get from point A to point B and C safely and compliantly while also thinking about your employees. Having that role at the table is going to be able to provide an opportunity for them to give you suggestions, be a thought partner on how you get there. Now, also thinking about people. You're bringing on new organizations, you're acquiring new companies, you're growing a business line, you're growing a business function. Well, have we thought about your current infrastructure, your current team model, your current structure? Is that going to still work? Is it going to put an extensive burden on your existing team? Are people going to get burnt out and worn out? Are they going to become disengaged and dissatisfied? Versus it could be as simple as, here's an example. It is wonderful that you are looking to expand and grow. I think that as you now get to this head count, when you look at your structure, you may already be strained. This may look like an internal promotion and development of someone to now support the larger members of the team. It may mean that you need to add a secondary or subdivision of a team or an additional team to support. Or it may mean if you're not able to bring additional FTE, how do we work with your current team to make sure that there's effective communication, to make sure that there is a strategy and approach to let people be able to give feedback, suggestions, and to provide and to demonstrate buy in and commitment. So when the changes happen, people are not feeling like the changes have come around and knocked them off their feet because they've not had time to adjust, adapt, and suggest, but also now to give them an opportunity to provide feedback, which may very well be valuable in where you're trying to go in things that may not have been thought through. Now, realistically, I understand that there are things in business that happen so quickly that you are not able to do this. However, if you have a partner at the table who's able to speak to and process and share their thoughts and opinions from a people perspective, you will often still get to point B and C from point A, just with a couple of tweaks that will now get you where you need to get to safely, soundly, compliantly, and with your people intact. So that's a lot to unpack. So when you have HR disguised or what I like to sometimes call muffled under the many layers in the organization, these are some of the immediate consequences that you will see. Oftentimes, you will see compliance errors. People risk multiply and they multiply quickly when not addressed. They multiply quickly when there is not a proactive strategy in place to proactively think through what may come ahead and make sure that there are safeguards along that journey in that way, in that process, to be safe and compliant in how things are being managed. Manager led investigations, no documentation. These are examples. These can turn into loss of engagement. Employees are disengaged. It can increase your turnover, and that can also create a profit loss. So, this is where I'm saying that there is a disconnect in organizations that think that HR is just this small afterthought secondary function that can just be funneled in after the fact. It can just be like, oh, we'll check with them after. Oh, they don't need to really be a part. When the smart organizations and organizations that are doing it well, these highest leaders of the organization, the CEOs that are running, the business owners that say, I have no knowledge of this. Want no parts in this. I want to make sure that we're doing it right. They are making sure that they have a strategic HR partner that is an expert in their field to sit at the table. Same way if they needed a financial checkup, they get a CPA or an accountant to come in. Same type of thing. At the end of the day, your people strategy is your business strategy. Your people strategy is a big component of your business strategy. Your business strategy that focuses on departmental growth, profit growth, and your customer growth. Well, all of that cannot work without your people, and all of that cannot work without your customers. They work hand in hand. So there's a couple of things on what should be done when we look at this. So you say, I hear you, Renee, you're talking about all this. Well, what is it that a company or an organization or a business should do? Where should HR sit? Well, here's my opinion on the matter. HR should report directly to the CEO and be a part of the executive leadership team, period. The HR business partner model versus just administrative HR and structuring needs to be looked at depending upon your size. What is your appropriate HR structure for your size? What is your appropriate HR structure as your organization grows? Rapid growth also equals a need for increased HR structure. And so it's very important for organizations to be able to think about what is my now structure for HR? What is my growth structure so that it can continue to support the organization? And we also need to think about how to do strategic HR alignment. So, how does strategic HR align to your organizational goals? How does that align to your risk mitigation process and your culture? So, in order to do that, in order to make sure that all of these pieces work together, this is why HR needs to sit at the executive level and sitting with and under and directly reporting to the CEO. Here's what we need to reflect on and think about through this process, because I can hear people now saying, oh, this is not true. I don't agree. Well, we can agree to disagree. This is my opinion, and this is not just an opinion with no facts. This is an opinion with one, trained educational background and knowledge, legal knowledge and background in employment and labor law, and over 20 years of experience as a people manager and HR executive and practitioner. I'm letting you know that without this alignment and structure, you run major risk. So here's what we reflect on. A disguised HR function, what does that say about your leadership? What does that say about the trust that you have in HR? What does it say about the focus that you are saying is that of your people and your employees? Employees read the structure. Hear me again. Employees read between the lines and they read and make assumptions about your structure. Actions speak louder than words. If HR doesn't matter here, neither do we. That's what people say. Believe me, I've heard it time and time again. When my role has sat under a function of the CFO and operations, people feel it, they know it, and they make assumptions. So, is your people saying if HR doesn't matter here, neither do we? So, how do you do this? How do you rebuild visibility and credibility for HR? It's just what we said earlier. It is about making sure that there is a seat at the table, not only just a seat at the table, but your HR infrastructure, your HR structure, your HR placement is pivotal and key. And I say this with all respect and professionalism. It is working until it's not. History shows, the EEOC claims show, data shows. The one that you say, we are a family unit, we are a team, we are just so kumbaya. Well, I'm here to bust your bubble and let you know that the moment that someone feels that they have not been treated fairly, and that they are being pushed out, or that they feel like there is favoritism, or someone got a promotion and an increase over someone else, and there wasn't thought to how the increases and promotions were done, and it potentially created what's called disparate impact, and they talk to somebody outside your organization, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, you've been discriminated against. You need to do something about it. And then your family situation that was kumbaya, pop goes the weasel, as they say. And now you're in a legal claim, you're in a legal dispute when some of those things could have been handled and guided differently before it got to this point. So rather than making sure that you had the expertise that was needed to guide, you now have a legal claim that's probably possibly come to the forefront. So that's a lot to unpack. This is what I call the ghost HR syndrome. Is when HR is not directly reporting to the utmost and highest operator of the organization, and that is often the CEO or the business owner. This should not be a multiple hat wearing role. This is not one that you roll in and fold in and you have with no decision making and or authority or thought leadership functionality in an organization. So here's my HR verdict on the matter. You can't hide HR and expect a healthy culture. You can't hide HR and expect that you are not going to be prone to increased liability and risk because you will not have an expert eye and opinion on the matter in the way that you do with other critical functions. If HR doesn't have a seat at the table and isn't directly reporting into that CEO, people risk will. It will have a seat at your table and it will increase your risk. Stop disguising HR. Stop creating ghost HR functions in organizations. Design it strategically. Again, as I always say, organizational leaders, business owners, make sure that you're strategic, intentional, and methodical in how you manage your organization. You are one decision, one wrong decision away from liability. So we need to make sure that you are buttoned up and you have your liability safeguard bumper railers on to protect you and your profits. So That's the HR verdict on the matter on this episode. Again, this is Renee Trotman, your host, your virtual advisor and counsel, coming to you today. Until next time.